We have reached our final round of research introductions, and those highlight projects in growing farm business and community. Now remember, if you have questions, please type them into the chat function of your media player, and those go right to me, and I'll make sure that we pose them to our awesome speakers. So first up, we have Marin Skidmore from UW-Madison. Welcome, Marin.
Hello, thank you. As Heather said, my name is Marin Skidmore. Sorry, Maria said, I am Marin Skidmore. I am at UW-Madison in the Agricultural Economics Department and the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, working with Dr. Jeremy Foltz on our project analyzing the costs and benefits of manure regulations for dairy farm economic viability and soil and water sustainability. The broader goal of this project is to analyze how variation in regulation affects water quality in Wisconsin. We know that this is a political and ongoing debate, and our hope is to contribute data-based answers that can cut through the politics and really shed light on how regulation influences water quality, but also how it affects the costs for farmers. To do this, we have been gathering data, first and foremost, on regulation and enforcement throughout the state. We are pouring through state and county level ordinances and compiling these into a data set that can be used for statistical analyses. We also have compiled data on surface water quality throughout the state. And we are also gathering information on all the other characteristics that affect agriculture and water quality. We understand that Wisconsin is a very diverse state in terms of its economy and topography and agriculture, and we want to represent this in our analyses. To back up this data analysis and really shed light on what's going on behind the data, we have been having conversations with actors in all aspects of manure management. So from the farmers who are responsible for manure management and also are the ones that are affected by regulation, to the county and state level officials that are crafting the regulation and are responsible for enforcement. This process is ongoing, so please do reach out if you would like to have a conversation and talk about your experience either contending with manure regulation or helping to regulate yourself. My contact information is on the Dairy Innovation Hub website and is in the summit information for today. I first and foremost would like to say that we do understand that all production in the state is subject to State Code NR 151. So really the fundamental question of our work is not what is enforceable, but rather who can enforce it. Counties are only able to enforce the portions of NR 151 that are in county level ordinances. So just because something isn't in a county ordinance, we understand that doesn't mean that it is not illegal in the county. However, it does mean that the county officials will not be able to intercede, and instead they'll that would be a county where the DNR or DATCAP or the DOJ would have to intercede. This leads to differences across the state in how many agencies are enforcing different aspects of production. So we see some counties where the Conservation Department prefers to handle enforcement themselves, either because they recognize that they have more local knowledge or they view themselves as a more agile agency as the larger state-run agencies. But there are also counties that prefer to leave enforcement up to the state, and usually because this allows them to maintain a different relationship with their farmers. One shared concern that I heard at every level, regardless of where in the state the person I was talking to is located or whether it was a farmer or a regulator, there's a lot of concern that the current system of enforcement is reactionary. This is because at both the state and the county level, there are not sufficient resources to have farm visits to every single farm to ensure in advance that every farm is in compliance with NR 151 or is in compliance with the county level ordinances. The end result, as I was told, is that that both county and state level officials are largely able to address the egregious cases after there's already been an accident. And so the current system is not addressing the chronic drip of nutrients into water. Our hope is to shed light on whether some aspects of the current system are addressing this chronic drip, and to shed light then on whether different pieces of the current regulation and current enforcement does improve water quality in a meaningful way. There are, as I said, largely, it's not possible to have oversight on every farm, but there are a few main things that lead to oversight, and this is what we will exploit as sources of variation in the amount of enforcement and oversight throughout the state. The first is the permitting process for storage structure construction. When a farmer either is going to construct a new storage facility or make significant changes on an existing facility, they then go through the permitting process, which will include likely an on-site visit and creating a manure management plan that has to be in compliance with 590. And so this increases the amount of oversight and the amount of enforcement taking place on the farm. The second is when a farm reaches CAFO status, and then it's subject to the Clean Water Act, and this brings on a lot more oversight and enforcement. We're very excited to start bringing together what we've learned through the interviews together with the data we've compiled. And so we'll be, as I said, studying how variations in county level ordinances and variations in CAFO prevalence lead to differences in water quality. Again, we're hoping that our work will cut through the political debate and offer data-backed answers on what types of manure management regulation and which levels of oversight are most effective for improving water quality. And also, we're going to really be looking for whether there are types that are not currently effective and are instead primarily just burdensome for farmers. Thanks again to the Dairy Hub for making all of this possible, and thank you for being here. And I look forward to your questions. Oh, and I should say now that I am happy to introduce Albert Boati from UW River Falls.
Thank you, Marin, for the kind introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here. The work I'm going to present today is work that I'm doing with my colleague, Dr. Sylvia Kehoe, essentially looking at some of the social aspects of dairy production with the objective of how it will impact the long-run sustainability of the industry. As you may be aware, the dairy industry or agriculture as a whole attempts to satisfy a number of criteria in terms of the sustainability space, what we typically call the 3 Ps, which is profit, people, and the planet. And so when we look at agriculture, when we look at the dairy industry, we have seen that there has been a lot of improvement over time in the productivity of the industry, which directly impacts its profitability. The data shows that since 1924, milk production has gone up by over 400% due to improved genetics mainly. And so what that has led to is the fact that greenhouse gas emission per unit of milk produced has also declined. So in terms of planet, in terms of productivity or profit, we have seen some improvement. But in recent times, we are seeing that different aspects of production have engaged public attention. And so we look at aspects, particularly looking at some of the ethical aspects of dairy production and how to prepare in the industry, how the industry can situate itself in order to address some of these concerns. In particular, our main interest looks at the animal welfare or the welfare of dairy cows. We have the available literature shows that there seems to be some gaps in terms of producer veterinary perspectives and that of the public. Specifically for this work, we are looking at the practice of early calf-dam separation in terms of public perceptions and what farmer practices are. We know that the welfare of the calf is important to the farmer in some sense as it is to the consumer, because the farmer needs a healthy, well taken care cow in order to meet his production aspirations. And so particularly in relation to early calf separation, what we are seeing is that we are seeing gaps between the motivations of the producer on the one hand and the consumer on the other hand. The producer partakes in that practice, separates the calf early from its mother for a variety of reasons, which include the need to prevent the situation where if they are kept together for a prolonged period, they develop a stronger bond, and then subsequent separation becomes problematic. The need to be able to give the calf adequate care, give it, its first milk, the issues around the current sort of housing infrastructural setup in most of the dairy farms are not adapted to having those two together. On the side of the public, there's also the notion that it is the natural thing to do to keep, the mother and the calf together. So we want to understand what the issues are, what the public thinks, how strongly the public thinks about it, and how the industry can meet those perspectives or perceptions in order to ensure that in the long term, from a social perspective, the industry is able to meet its social sustainability goals. One of the issues that we are very interested in this work is what alternatives are there for producers. We know that at least from the scientific literature, there are different housing or management practices that producers or farmers can engage in. Can they use some form of limited contact approach? Can they use some kind of a restricted suckling approach? Can they use a foster cow to take care of a group of calves? All these are potential options that are on the table. What do consumers think about this? What do producers think? If consumers are willing to pay some extra for the milk, are producers willing to accept this? So I think these are all very important issues that we want to address. The overall objective of this work is trying to identify the different points of convergence. Okay, are there places in what consumer thinks and what producer thinks that we can come together in order to ensure that the dairy industry is positioned in a very strategic way? The overall objective is to get the greater insights in both consumer and farmer perceptions to enhance the decision making. And I think that the insights that we'll generate will help achieve the triple goals of sustainability, enhanced animal welfare, and long-term profitability. I'll use the last minute I have to look at the progress of work so far. So we are in the stage of designing our survey instruments. We are going to talk to farmers to see, to understand their perceptions and practices and their motivations. We are going to talk to consumers to see their preferences, their perceptions about the issue of calf welfare. And whether they are willing, in some sense, to pay a premium for farmers to, if required, do alternative practices. Again, the hope is that by the end of this study, we'll be able to attenuate the concerns that consumers have and help the dairy industry strategically position themselves in order to meet the social needs of the public and of consumers in general. With this, I will end here, and then I will invite my friend Heidi to take it over. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Albert. It is a pleasure to be here today to hear this wide variety of topics. I'm here today to tell you about the Dairy Innovation Student Challenge, a competition for students I coordinated this semester to develop new ideas that can benefit the Wisconsin dairy industry. Final projects for this Dairy Innovation Hub supported program were due yesterday, so that participants in today's summit would have the opportunity to review the students' work. So there are recordings of the 7 presentations available for you to view through the link you see on this slide here. And I hope that you'll take the time to watch them and then vote using an online survey for your favorite ideas. The student project with the top votes will receive the Best of the Dairy Summit Award. Before you view the student work, however, I wanted to give you a little bit more background on the competition itself. One of the main motivations for creating a program like this came from how frequently it seems that agriculture is missing from conversations about innovation and entrepreneurship. In those kinds of conversations, you mostly hear people talking about pharmaceuticals or other health sectors or software. And those happen in all kinds of venues, whether that's a venture capital roundtable, events that encourage new startup businesses, in media coverage, and at universities, where for the most part, business and other innovation competitions are mostly anchored in business and engineering programs. Now we're starting to see some changes to this pattern. In dairy specifically, it's becoming more common to see innovation discussions, particularly around food product development. Some of you may be aware of the fact that Real Milk California has been hosting a snack accelerator where they are incentivizing food companies to develop new dairy-based snack foods. Or you may be familiar with the fact that Nestle has expanded its R&D recently by opening a new dairy startup accelerator program in Switzerland. So in this landscape, it seemed like the Dairy Innovation Hub offered a huge opportunity to be able to host a dairy-specific student challenge competition in Wisconsin, leveraging some of the best idea generators in the state who are the students from our UW system campuses. So in order to do this, I joined forces with colleagues at the Madison-based Hyper Innovation Agency to establish the challenge this fall. It was open to students from all 3 campuses, undergraduate students or graduate students. And we, of course, promoted it to agricultural majors, but we also very intentionally promoted it to majors outside of agricultural programs because we really wanted to forward one of the Dairy Innovation Hub's goals to attract new talent to the dairy industry. We were also able to leverage the work done by the state's Dairy Task Force 2.0, and we used a number of their recommendations in order to develop the 3 major challenge areas that we were asking students to focus on. We could also build on Hyper Innovation's experience with running challenges like this, including challenges that they've run in the past in partnership with the Wisconsin Institutes of Discovery in Madison. A critical component for making this program really get off the ground was having volunteer mentors. Those volunteer mentors provided the student teams with access to their connections and their expertise, and they also gave students a lot of real-world advice on their projects. We were able to recruit mentors from among the faculty at the 3 participating campuses, Wisconsin dairy organizations and businesses, and from the startup and innovation community in Madison as well, which includes the UW-Madison Discovery to Product program and Merlin Mentors, which is a startup coaching program that's run out of Research Park. If any of the mentors who assisted our students this semester are listening, I really want to thank you for all the wisdom and guidance you provided them with. So a little bit of background about the process we used for the challenge. We identified 3 areas, as I said, based on the Dairy Task Force 2.0 recommendations, and you can see those here on the slide. Enhancing the shelf life of Wisconsin dairy products, encouraging dairy product consumption among Wisconsin students, particularly K-12 students, and utilizing the Internet of Things or robotic technologies to be able to enhance farm operations. As you can see from the slide, we had 7 project ideas that went forward in the process, and they were fairly evenly divided among the 3 categories. Once the students settled on these 7 project ideas, they had to form teams around each one of them. Some of the students already had teams formed. Some of them made new connections and formed teams after they submitted their ideas. One group in particular that ended up pursuing 2 of the ideas you see here was made up of an MBA student at UW-Madison and 2 undergraduates at UW-River Falls who'd never met each other before this project. In the end, we had 5 teams participate, and 2 of those 5 teams each pursued 2 ideas, which is how we ended up with 7 ideas. So again, once the teams were formed, we paired each team with an industry mentor based on the mentor's experience and interest. And after that point, the teams and their mentors worked through the steps to come up with a business plan. Their final product is a presentation outlining their concept, which includes an analysis of what's required to take their idea to market. Specifically, when you watch the presentations, you'll see a description of their solution and the gap it fills in the marketplace. We also asked them to analyze the competitive landscape they were planning to function in. And we expected them to do third-party research using the library, but several of the teams actually did their own original survey research, and you can see those results when you watch their presentations. We asked them to describe how their solution is desirable to their target audience and how it's feasible and viable in the marketplace. Addressing sustainability is also important in coming up with new ideas, so that was a component of their presentation. And the final step was for them to outline an execution plan with exactly what would be needed to make this idea a reality. So now that the projects are done, we are looking forward to seeing what they do next. In 8 weeks, it wasn't realistic for them to build out a full-born business plan, but there are a number of resources that exist throughout UW system to support students who want to pursue business ideas and entrepreneurship, including WARF and WISES, as well as the Discovery to Product program, and we're looking forward to seeing if some of them choose that path. I hope you'll spend some of your non-summit time today watching the student presentation so you can see for yourselves the creativity, the positive energy, and the effort that they put into their ideas. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Maria for questions.
Thanks, Heidi, and thanks to all of our speakers in this section. We do have a little bit of time for questions, and so I guess I'll start with the first one, and this really applies to all 3 of you, so you can probably take, each of you can take a little bit of time to answer. Each of your projects is in the growing farm business and community space. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of economic sustainability to your work and maybe what that means for farmers or processors?
I can take the first answer at that. We certainly understand that being in compliance with this regulation can be very costly for farmers, and so part of what we're thinking about is whether we can identify pieces that really aren't reaching the environmental goals and are hindering the economic sustainability of farms, and that would be a space where we could suggest really tailoring and targeting policies differently. And then also probably highlighting places where the environmental improvements are very large. And then the question is how through matching funds and other ways can policy makers and regulators work to make the goals of reaching those environmental goals economically viable for farmers.
Thank you for the question, Maria. I think more and more food is no longer calories. Food is no longer calories. Food is increasingly becoming a bundle of attributes that people like. So you take the calorie portion of it, we have the social portion of it, we have the environmental portion of it, and all those things, that whole bundle is important, because the economic profitability or sustainability is intrinsically linked with the social sustainability, it's intrinsically linked with the environmental sustainability aspects of the industry. And so I think that by trying to understand what consumers think, by trying to put the industry in a position where they can address some of the social aspects of the milk that they produce, I think inadvertently we are enhancing the economic bottom line of the industry. So I think all of it is the part of the same whole. And by looking at social, we are also looking at the profitability as well, because those things are linked in some ways. Thank you.
Before I move on, Heidi, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Of course, economic sustainability is incredibly important, especially when you're talking about new business ideas. It won't get very far if you can't make it work from a business sense. So that was a required component for all of these projects. And I think one of the teams that did a great job explaining that in their presentation was the ice cold milk pouches. They explained how more expensive packaging may be worth it if they can defer shipping and refrigeration costs long term. So obviously economic sustainability is an important element of that word.
All right, again, just a big thanks to the three of you. And also thanks to everyone who has joined for the first annual Dairy Summit.